Welcome to the Fulfilling Career Happy Life podcast. As you know, in this season, we're addressing different topics and how they impact your career in ways that you may not think about. And today I'm excited that we're going to be talking about imposter syndrome. And the reason that I selected this topic is because I see it a lot. Sometimes people call it different things, but it's remarkable how often a client will bring it up, even using those words and feeling like it is getting in their way, as though imposter syndrome is a being. But the truth is, it exists within us. We are essentially getting in our own way. And the great news in that is we can get out of our own way. So I'm so excited to talk today with my guest, Maria Tomas-Keegan. Maria is a certified career and life coach. She's an award-winning author and an international TV host. Like me, Maria had a successful corporate career, and now she runs a coaching business. And her specialty is in working with women in career transition. So she is the perfect person to talk to about today regarding imposter syndrome. And when I knew, she and I got together and had sort of a pre-chat, and it just fed on itself. It was a great conversation, and I'm really excited to share this with you today. So, Maria, welcome. I'm so glad to have you.
Randi, thanks so much. It's an honor to be here.
So let me start with how you define imposter syndrome and why you think it's so prevalent, especially among women today.
Yeah. Well, I don't know that my definition of imposter syndrome is any different than anyone else's, but I see it as a kind of this persistent feeling of self-doubt and maybe a fear of being exposed as a fraud, even though we have evidence to the contrary, right? We have previous successes, we have deep skills and competence, yet it's particularly prevalent among professional women. And I think that's partly due to the societal expectations and maybe the traditional roles that men and women have played historically. And women have been seen in supportive roles more than leadership roles. But today, women are breaking new ground, thank the good Lord, both in their careers and in their families. And they're venturing into territories where they might not see role models to mirror their experience. So this pioneering path they're on can often lead to us questioning our abilities, even when we might be doing really good work and succeeding and excelling in what we do.
There's so much in what you said, Maria. I think your definition around that persistent feeling of self-doubt and the fear of being exposed is something that I absolutely see in clients. And it requires a lot of energy to get past that and move forward in spite of that. And that energy is a drain from the other things that we could be doing. It's so interesting also in what you said is that it's this is almost a historical thing. It's something that we've worked past, is that women have usually been in these support roles, and now we're stepping up in a new way in leadership roles. And a part of me feels a little, I don't know, sad, defeated, something that we're still talking about this.
I know.
Yeah. So, but today, the good news is today we're going to talk about some of the things people can do so that we get out of our own way. Right. We've talked a lot about this in relationship to women in particular, and I know that your practice is focused on women. I see men as well. Do you feel that imposter syndrome is unique to women?
Probably not. Probably not. I think it can affect men too. But I think men find it harder to show vulnerability. that can make it challenging for them to share their feelings if they are feeling doubt or inadequate in any way. And it doesn't mean that they experience the feelings any less. I think instead they might internalize it or maybe express them differently, maybe through overcompensation or an excessive drive to prove themselves, maybe. I think what's interesting, though, is that even though the phenomenon may be universal, and I don't know that for sure, but I highly suspect it is. I think the dialogue around imposter syndrome has been more prominent in women because it's a conversation that's kind of twisted in with discussions about gender equality and how we are represented in the workplace.
Yeah,
Um,
I have found similar things. I do agree with you. I think that one of the differences that I see, I do think that many people experience imposter syndrome,
mm,
men and women. I think women are blessed with an easier ability to seek out some help or
yeah,
talk to someone about it,
yeah,
which is the way you sort of, your eyes get open to the fact that many, many people feel this way.
yeah.
So that's one of the differences that I see for sure.
Yeah, and I think what's important then, as a result, it's really crucial to kind of foster environments, whether in personal circles or in the workplace, where we can have open discussions about those feelings of self-doubt and personal growth, and encourage people to talk about it and kind of normalize the way we discuss it, the way we think about it, instead of there being a stigma about it. Yeah, I think the more we talk about these experiences, the more we realize that it's really a natural part of the human condition and it's not a flaw. It's
Yeah.
not a flaw, it's not a weakness.
There's such value in what you're saying because so many of the people that are listening to us and that follow what we do are in leadership roles. So
Mhm.
they're listening to this from a perspective of how does it impact them, as well as how does it impact the people that they lead. And whether the listener is a man or
So
a
true.
woman, the
Yep.
teams are hopefully made up of men and women because that
Right.
diversity builds strength. So that awareness of creating that environment can just help move things forward in the right way. I like that.
Yeah. Yeah. We just got to talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So one of the things that I know you and I have talked about a little bit is for ourselves as well as for other people that we see with similar backgrounds, we tend to coach what we know, coach what we've experienced. I think it makes us more effective having experienced that. During your career, did you personally experience imposter syndrome and sort of how did you approach that?
Um, Countless times.
Yeah.
can't I can't even count the number of times. Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's such an integral part of our growth. I think, what I said before, it is part of the human condition, right? So, early in my coaching career, now despite you mentioned I've had a long corporate career, 30 plus years in corporate leadership, and then 20 of those years I was within the corporate environment, mentoring and coaching others. Despite all of that, when I started my coaching business 11 years ago, I found myself really questioning my ability to make a difference as a coach. I remember preparing for a workshop early in my career, and I remember thinking, who do I think I am? Who am I to guide these fabulous women through their career transitions? who am I? But what helped me, I worked with a coach on this. Every coach needs a coach.
Absolutely.
Everybody needs a coach. But what helped me overcome this fear of inadequacy was a shift in perspective, a shift in the way I thought about it. I began to focus on the value that I bring through all of my experience in career transition, the career changes I've been through, all the life changes I've been through, and the transformations that I've witnessed with the people that I have worked with in the past through my coaching. So when I recognized that and I kind of embraced it, I've learned that, giving your accomplishments, your value, and your impact a big hug, and understanding that your contributions are valid and they're needed. So overcoming imposter syndrome isn't a one-time event. I told you I've had it bunches of times, but it's a continuous process of self-affirmation, and growth.
I so relate to just about everything you said.
Yeah.
I can remember for myself, imposter syndrome definitely impacted me, and it pokes its unwanted head up at times when I don't expect it still. But
Yes.
I vividly remember when I had taken on my dream job in a corporate setting. I was in pharma and, landed the place that I always wanted to be, and almost immediately thought, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do. How do I know what to do? And when you've taken on that new level of responsibility is the time when you maybe feel the least confidence in asking for help. The time you need the help the
Exactly.
most is when you feel the least able to ask for it. And I also was working with a coach, and I remember vividly asking her, "Does everybody feel this way?"
Yeah.
And she said, "Yes, it's just that nobody talks about it."
Yeah.
So that was, in fact, that's one of the things that led me to be a coach for my next career, was I knew how valuable that was for me. And even when you think you've conquered it, it comes up again. It did when I started my coaching career, just like you said.
Yeah.
When I started to go public with what I was doing, like, who's going to want to listen to me? What do I have
Yeah.
to say? And
And back then, not everyone knew what a coach did,
true.
right?
I think that's still the case.
Well, less so, I think,
Yes.
because there are so many of us around. But yes, but yes, we not only had to explain what we do, and we had to convince them that we knew what we were doing.
Yeah, for sure. I think for me, the shift in perspective there came when I realized that I don't have to be the coach for everyone. I can't be the coach for everyone.
No,
Um,
no,
and when the chemistry is there and the right, the click is there, if you will, the transformation can be powerful. So I sort of
yeah,
took the pressure off myself in a little bit. I think
yeah,
that's how my perspective shifted. So you're
yeah,
exactly right.
yeah,
Makes a huge difference. Yeah.
yeah. Just gotta change the way you think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But something else you said too, I think is really valuable, which is it's a practice. It's like eh, meditation, yoga, gratitude, so many things we practice. You can't turn your back on it completely, because then the need comes up again. So the more it just becomes something that you deal with on an ongoing basis, the more effectively you can succeed in the face of it, I think.
yeah. No, I think you're absolutely right. And the more open we are to understanding our feelings, right? And it pops up, we recognize it sooner. We go, oh, there's that old friend coming to visit again,
Yeah.
right? It's all how we respond to it,
Yeah.
instead of, responding with fear or doubt. We can respond in a different way that serves us better.
Yeah. Yeah. I try and think of it as this, like you said, this friend that's popping up and trying to help me be better. But I need to shift that conversation in my head so that it really does feel like a focus on being better rather than a focus on all the ways that I'm not or a client isn't good enough, which is sometimes the story we tell ourselves.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's try and get very practical. What strategies, what tips, what practices do you work with clients on when this imposter syndrome feeling is popping up?
Yeah. Well, I believe that all emotions need motion in order for us to process them and have them come up and out. So the first thing I think is to acknowledge the feelings that you feel when you're feeling this imposter syndrome. Uh, Acknowledge them without judgment. So recognizing that it's a response, not a reflection of your true ability. And secondly, I think cultivating, and this is a recommendation in so many areas for me to my clients, but it's cultivating a support network of mentors, peers, coaches, whomever you need around you who can provide that perspective and validation, people you trust who will tell you the truth when you need to hear it, right?
Yeah.
And then third is to celebrate those achievements, no matter how small they are, and celebrate them as they occur, because giving credence to those successes can be powerful reminders of your worth and your capabilities. And that just kind of solidifies that you are good enough, that you got this, right? And lastly, I think we just need to practice, back to the word you were using a moment ago, practice self-compassion. Give yourself grace. Speak to yourself as though you were advising your very best friend who is struggling through a similar situation. How would you speak to her?
Yeah.
Or him, right? What advice would you give them? And just turn that around and take a little dose of your own medicine.
I love everything you just said. And I think it's really will be really helpful for the folks that are listening to us that can relate to this feeling of imposter syndrome. I mean, you said emotions need motion and we should acknowledge them. And I love that because, the response, not a reflection piece of it, that reaction we have, that emotion that we feel is basically just a human reaction to stress.
Yeah.
And so recognizing it as such and acknowledging it enables you to move past it a little bit. It normalizes it a little bit. So
Right. And you said it earlier, it's like we get in our own way, and we cause a lot of our own stress. If we could just think about it differently, just shift how we think about it. It reminds me of my probably my very favorite quote now. I've had many over the years, but this is my latest favorite and has been for a long time now. Dr. Wayne Dyer said, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change.
one of my favorite quotes.
It is. I just got goosey saying it. I love that quote because it's so simple, but so profound, right? When we change the way we look at things, the things we look at change. And it is so true. And it's true about this. It's true about how we respond to those feelings of inadequacy and self-doubt.
Yeah. There's so much there. I really appreciate you sharing all that.
Sure.
And it's so funny that you came up with the Wayne Dwyer quote because that truly is one of my favorites. I
Is
love
it?
it. Yeah,
Yeah,
it
I
is.
love it
I
too.
say it frequently.
He
Yeah.
says he has so many great quotes, but that one is like implanted in my brain,
Yeah.
never to never to leave.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the other areas that I'd like to touch on in relation to imposter syndrome has to do with your focus around career transitions. You do so much work with that. this is a time when imposter syndrome can pop up.
Mhm.
So
Okay.
specifically during those times, do you have tips or suggestions for how people can overcome that feeling that may hold them back?
Well, yeah. So when imposter syndrome rears its ugly head during change, periods of change in our lives or transition, it can magnify the uncertainties in any career transition, it making the leap so much more difficult and daunting. And it can hold us back, right? So it's really crucial during those times to ground yourself in your why, right? The core reasons behind your desire for change. What are those? And when you ground yourself in that why, it becomes bigger than, and you need to make it bigger than the feelings that you're having. And you need to reflect on what you're moving toward, not just what you're leaving behind.
Yeah.
Right. And that's really important. So, and I've talked about surrounding yourself with people, but surround yourselves also with stories of those who have successfully navigated similar career or life changes. And remember that every expert on the planet was a beginner, right? They started as a beginner. They just didn't be an expert. They had to start somewhere. And that's the way we all start. So embracing that the learning curve as part of your growth is important. It's not a measure of inadequacy at all.
Yeah. That's important because I mean, in all cases, when you're making a career transition, you're going to be learning new things. You're going to be flexing new muscles. And
Absolutely.
even if it's a lateral move, there's new processes and things. And
Sure.
so showing yourself that kindness to give yourself a chance to really learn it uh, is really important. This is this is great. I'm thinking of so many clients that I've had these same conversations with, and looking at the specific tips that you gave about acknowledging the emotion without judgment. Cultivating that support network
Mm.
is so important because in staying in our own heads, we just can't possibly have all of the answers and see all of the possibilities and understand that everyone feels that way as well.
Yeah. So true.
And the two other things you said, I couldn't even pick which ones I love the most. Celebrating the achievements, which is really recognizing that we are good enough that we can do it.
Yeah.
And then we can build on that. Successes can be built on if you recognize them. And the practicing self-compassion, because we so often are harder on ourselves than we would be on anyone else.
Right.
So treating ourselves as though as the way we would treat others, we can really get out of our own way a little bit and move forward. And truthfully, you know, that imposter syndrome, just at a time when you may be wanting to be your best, bring all of your skills, prove yourself in a new situation, that imposter syndrome can prevent you from doing just that.
It can. It can keep us stuck in a place we don't belong.
Yeah. Yeah. This has just been so helpful. I've really appreciated this conversation, and I think it's going to be really helpful for the folks listening. For those people that have listened to us, Maria, that want to hear more, you put out so much good content. I take it in many different ways, but tell people how they can find you, how they can get more of what you have to offer.
Sure. So probably the best way is to just head over to my website, which is transitionandthrivewithmaria.com. And we'll be introducing within the next week, maybe even by the time this is aired, a new series of career transition tools, starting with a career readiness assessment, and that will be available on my website as well. There are also some trainings and my book, that all those things can be seen on the website.
Great. That's great. And we'll make sure we put those links in the show notes so that people can go back and find you easily. Because I know you do your own podcast and TV show. I mean, the amount of wisdom that you put out there is significant. So I hope people will tap into that.
Thank you.
Yeah. So thank you for joining me today. It's been such a pleasure, as it always is when you and I get together and talk. I really have appreciated
It's always
it so
fun.
much.
Yeah, me too, Randi. Thank you for having me on your show. I really appreciate you and all that you do. And I'm wishing you the very, very best.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks so much for listening to Fulfilling Career, Happy Life. If you enjoy the show, please subscribe, follow, rate, and review. Do all the things to show your support for this podcast. It helps other professionals who want to feel more energized about their work again find us. And if you want to take this thinking further, please follow me on LinkedIn, where I share content on a regular basis. You can also get on my email list by downloading the Career Satisfaction Assessment or through my website. All these links are in the show notes. Thanks again for tuning in. I truly appreciate that you make the time for yourself to listen to the show. See you next week.